From the moment a human being enters the world, long before any achievement, title, or recognition appears, something profound already exists within them. There is an intrinsic worth that does not come from money, status, appearance, intelligence, or the approval of others. This worth exists before society assigns labels, before comparison begins, before fear of failure takes root. At the deepest level of existence, a human being is not a small, accidental creature struggling to prove value in a chaotic universe. Each person carries a sacred essence, a living spark of creative force, awareness, and potential that has been present since the first breath of life. This inner essence cannot be measured by material standards because it belongs to a dimension deeper than material success. It is the silent foundation of imagination, courage, compassion, creativity, and the mysterious power that allows human beings to transform ideas into reality. Many people move through life without realizing this truth. From childhood, the world often teaches a very different lesson. People are trained to believe that their value must be earned, that they must compete, achieve, outperform, and gain recognition before they deserve respect or love. Slowly, this conditioning replaces the natural sense of inner worth that once existed effortlessly. A child may begin life feeling alive, curious, and worthy simply because they exist. But as years pass, comparison begins to shape identity. Grades, appearance, success, social approval, and external validation begin to define how a person sees themselves. Without noticing it, many individuals gradually forget the quiet truth that their worth was never dependent on those external measures. They begin to shrink their perception of themselves, believing they are only as valuable as their latest success or as limited as their latest failure. Yet history quietly reveals a different reality. Consider the greatest achievements humanity has ever created: the pyramids rising from ancient deserts, the exploration of space beyond the atmosphere of Earth, medical breakthroughs that have saved millions of lives, technological innovations that connect people across the planet. Every one of these extraordinary accomplishments began as a simple thought inside someone's mind. Before stone was carved, before rockets launched, before discoveries changed the course of civilization, there was only imagination. There was a human mind that dared to consider a possibility that did not yet exist. The individuals who shaped these breakthroughs were not born with a fundamentally different essence than anyone else. What separated them from the majority was not superior worth, but recognition. At some moment in their lives, they recognized the value of the creative power within themselves and chose to trust it. This recognition is not arrogance, and it is not self-glorification. It is the simple acceptance that the human being is more than a passive observer of reality. Within every individual lies a source of creative intelligence capable of shaping ideas, influencing environments, and contributing something unique to the unfolding story of life. When a person truly acknowledges this inner worth, something subtle begins to shift. Their posture changes, not just physically but psychologically. They begin to speak with more clarity, think with more possibility, and approach challenges with a different kind of resilience. Obstacles do not immediately disappear, but the relationship to those obstacles changes. Instead of interpreting difficulty as evidence of inadequacy, the individual begins to see it as part of growth, part of exploration, part of the process of bringing inner potential into visible form. One of the greatest tragedies in human life is not failure, but forgetting one's own value. When people lose connection with their intrinsic worth, they begin to settle for lives that feel smaller than the possibilities within them. They may remain in environments that drain their spirit, relationships that diminish their confidence, or patterns of thinking that constantly reinforce limitation. This happens not because the individual lacks ability, but because they have accepted a narrow definition of themselves. The moment someone remembers that their worth originates from something deeper than circumstances, a doorway opens. They begin to question the boundaries they once accepted as permanent. They begin to notice opportunities they previously overlooked. They begin to feel a quiet courage growing within them. Inner worth is not something that must be manufactured through effort. It is something that must be recognized. Just as the sun continues to shine even when clouds cover the sky, the intrinsic value of a person remains present even when doubt, Fear or disappointment obscure it. Life experiences may create layers of insecurity, criticism, or hesitation. But those layers do not destroy the core essence of who someone is. Beneath those layers there remains a powerful center of awareness and possibility waiting to be acknowledged. When an individual reconnects with this center, they are not becoming someone new. They are remembering who they have always been. The recognition of intrinsic worth has profound consequences for the way a person lives. When you understand that your value is inherent rather than conditional, you stop living as though you must constantly prove your right to exist. Your decisions become less driven by fear of rejection and more guided by authenticity. You begin to choose paths that align with your deeper sense of purpose rather than simply chasing approval. This does not mean life becomes effortless, but it does mean that the foundation beneath your actions becomes stronger. Instead of building your identity on temporary achievements, you begin building it on the stable, understanding that you already carry something meaningful within you. From this understanding, creativity expands, confidence grows naturally, compassion deepens because when you recognize the sacred value within yourself, it becomes easier to recognize that same value in others. The world begins to appear less like a battlefield of competition and more like a vast field of possibility, where each person has a unique contribution to offer. Every individual becomes a distinct expression of life, carrying perspectives, talents, and experiences that no one else can replicate. Remember this carefully. Your value does not begin the day you succeed. Your value does not appear when others finally approve of you. Your value did not start when you accomplished something impressive. It has always been there, quietly present beneath every doubt and every question. The task before you is not to create worth, but to recognize it, honor it, and allow it to guide the way you live. When that recognition becomes real, a powerful transformation begins. Because a person who truly understands their intrinsic value no longer lives as a spectator of life. They begin to live as a conscious participant in the unfolding creation of their own reality. The moment a person begins to recognize their inner worth, something subtle yet powerful begins to change in the way they experience life. This recognition does not arrive like a loud announcement or a dramatic revelation. Instead, it often begins quietly. As a small shift in perception, a person starts to realize that their value has never depended entirely on external circumstances. They begin to understand that beneath every success and every mistake, there exists a deeper identity that remains untouched by temporary outcomes. Inner worth is not something that fluctuates with praise or criticism. It is the steady foundation of who you are, a quiet center of dignity and possibility that exists regardless of what is happening around you. Many people spend years searching for value in places where it cannot truly be found. They look for it in achievements, believing that if they accomplish enough, they will finally feel worthy. They search for it in approval, hoping that recognition from others will confirm their importance. Some attempt to prove their value through endless productivity, while others try to secure it through possessions, influence, or reputation. Yet even when these things are obtained, the feeling of worth often remains unstable. A person may experience moments of pride or validation, but these feelings fade quickly because they are tied to conditions that can change at any time. Inner worth operates on a completely different level. It does not come from what you have done. It comes from what you fundamentally are. When people begin to discover this truth, they often realize that the limitations they once believed in were never absolute. The human mind has an extraordinary ability to create boundaries that appear real simply because they have been repeated for so long. Many individuals grow up hearing statements that quietly shape their identity. They may be told that they are not talented enough, not intelligent enough, not confident enough, or not capable of achieving certain goals. Over time, these messages become internal voices that influence decisions and expectations. Yet these voices do not represent the true capacity of the individual. They are simply echoes of past experiences and social conditioning. Recognizing inner worth means beginning to question these inherited beliefs and seeing that they do not define the essence of who you are. Throughout history, there have always been individuals who chose to see themselves differently. They refused to measure their potential solely by the opinions of others or by the limitations of their environment. Instead, they recognized a deeper source of value within themselves and allowed that recognition to guide their actions. Many of the great innovators, creators, and visionaries of the world began their journeys under circumstances that offered little encouragement. Some faced rejection, criticism, or repeated failure. Yet they continued moving forward because somewhere within them existed a quiet certainty that their ideas mattered. They trusted the creative intelligence within their own minds, even when the world had not yet recognized its significance. This trust in one's inner worth creates a profound shift in behavior. When a person believes their value depends entirely on external approval, they often hesitate to act. Fear of judgment becomes stronger than curiosity. The possibility of failure becomes more intimidating than the excitement of exploration. As a result, many people silence their ideas before they are ever expressed. But when an individual begins to recognize their intrinsic worth, they become more willing to engage with life. They speak their thoughts more openly, pursue opportunities more confidently, and approach challenges with greater resilience. The difference does not come from suddenly becoming fearless. It comes from understanding that mistakes do not erase their value. Inner worth also changes the way a person interprets success and failure. Instead of viewing success as proof of personal superiority, it becomes a natural outcome of effort, creativity, and persistence. Instead of interpreting failure as evidence of inadequacy, it becomes information that helps refine the path forward. This perspective allows individuals to grow more quickly because they are no longer paralyzed by the fear of being wrong. They can experiment, learn, adapt, and continue moving toward their goals without constantly questioning whether they deserve to try. Another important aspect of recognizing inner worth is the impact it has on relationships. When people doubt their own value, they often seek validation from others in ways that create imbalance. They may tolerate disrespect, suppress their authentic voice, or compromise their boundaries in order to maintain approval. But when someone truly understands their worth, their relationships begin to change. They become more selective about the environments they remain in and the energy they accept from others. They interact from a place of self-respect rather than insecurity. This does not make them distant or arrogant. Instead, it allows them to connect with others in a healthier and more genuine way, because their sense of identity is no longer dependent on constant reassurance. Recognizing inner worth also awakens creativity. When individuals stop doubting the legitimacy of their own ideas, they begin to explore possibilities that once felt out of reach. Innovation often begins with a simple question: what if things could be different? But that question can only be pursued by someone who believes their curiosity is valuable enough to follow. Many breakthroughs in science, art, technology, and philosophy began with individuals who trusted the importance of their own thinking, even when others did not yet understand it. Their confidence was not arrogance. It was recognition of the creative potential inherent in human consciousness. As this recognition deepens, a person begins to notice opportunities that once seemed invisible. When the mind is dominated by doubt, it tends to focus on limitations. It searches for reasons why something cannot be done. But when the mind operates from a sense of inner worth, it becomes more open to possibility. The same situation that once appeared impossible begins to reveal new paths, new ideas, and new solutions. This shift in perception can dramatically change the trajectory of a person's life. Ultimately, discovering inner worth is not about convincing yourself that you are extraordinary compared to others. It is about realizing that every human being carries a profound value that deserves to be expressed. Your thoughts, your perspective, and your contributions are part of a larger creative process unfolding through humanity. When you acknowledge this truth, you stop waiting for permission to live fully. You begin participating more actively in shaping your experiences and contributing to the world around you. The recognition of inner worth is therefore not a single moment of realization, but an ongoing process of remembering. Each day offers opportunities to strengthen that awareness. Each choice made from a place of authenticity reinforces the understanding that your value is not fragile or conditional. It is a fundamental aspect of your existence. The more you live from this awareness, the more clearly you begin to see the vast potential that has always been present within you, waiting patiently to be acknowledged and brought into the light. When a person begins to recognize their inner worth, the next realization that slowly unfolds is the discovery of the immense potential that already exists within them. Most people move through life believing that their abilities are limited by their past experiences, their education, or the circumstances they were born into. They assume that what they have done so far represents the true boundary of what they are capable of doing. Yet this assumption is rarely accurate. Human potential is not a fixed structure. It is more like an unfolding landscape that reveals new possibilities as awareness expands. Beneath the surface of everyday thinking lies a reservoir of creativity, resilience, intelligence, and intuition that often remains untouched simply because individuals have never been encouraged to explore it. From childhood, many people learn to define themselves through labels that appear small and rigid. They may hear that they are shy, average, ordinary, or not talented in certain areas. Over time, these labels become part of their identity. The mind begins to organize behavior around them, reinforcing the belief that one's capabilities are limited to a narrow range of outcomes. Yet these labels rarely reflect the full truth of a person's potential. They are simply interpretations formed at particular moments in time, often influenced by the opinions of others or by temporary circumstances. When someone accepts these interpretations without questioning them, they unknowingly place invisible boundaries around their own development. Awakening inner potential begins when those boundaries start to dissolve. This often happens the moment a person realizes that the abilities they once believed were fixed can actually grow. Human beings possess an extraordinary capacity for learning and adaptation. The brain itself is designed to change and evolve through experience. Skills that once felt impossible can gradually become natural through practice and persistence. Confidence that once seemed absent can develop through repeated acts of courage. Creativity that once appeared dormant can awaken when curiosity is given the freedom to explore. In this way, potential expands not because something new is added from outside, but because what already exists within is finally allowed to emerge. Imagination plays a powerful role in this process. Imagination allows the mind to move beyond the limitations of the present moment and consider possibilities that have not yet taken form in reality. Every invention, discovery, and transformation that has ever shaped human history began as a simple image within someone's mind. Before there was a bridge, someone imagined a way to cross a river. Before there was flight, someone imagined the possibility of rising into the sky. Before every innovation that defines the modern world, there was a human being who allowed their mind to envision something different from what already existed. Imagination, therefore, is not a distraction from reality. It is one of the primary forces that shape it. Yet imagination alone is not enough to awaken potential. The bridge between imagination and reality is built through belief and action. When a person begins to believe that their abilities can grow, they naturally begin behaving differently. They become more willing to experiment, more willing to learn, and more willing to step beyond familiar patterns. Instead of avoiding challenges, they start approaching them with curiosity. Each new attempt becomes a form of exploration rather than a test of personal worth. In this environment, growth becomes inevitable, because the individual has stopped protecting old limitations and started investing energy in new possibilities. Another important element in awakening inner potential is the willingness to confront fear. Whenever someone begins expanding beyond their previous boundaries, uncertainty appears. The unknown can feel uncomfortable because it lies outside the territory where the mind feels safe. Many people retreat at this stage, interpreting discomfort as a signal that they are not ready or not capable. In reality, the opposite is often true. Discomfort frequently appears at the very edge of growth. It is the mind adjusting to new levels of responsibility, creativity, and awareness. Those who continue moving forward despite this temporary uncertainty often discover that what once felt intimidating gradually becomes manageable. It is also important to understand that potential does not unfold all at once. It reveals itself gradually through experience. Each challenge faced and each skill developed uncovers another layer of ability that previously remained hidden. A person who begins learning a new craft may initially feel inexperienced and uncertain, but with time patterns become clearer. Confidence grows, and the mind adapts to the complexity of the task. What once seemed difficult eventually becomes natural. This pattern repeats itself across nearly every area of human life. Growth is rarely dramatic in a single moment. It is usually the result of consistent engagement with possibility. As individuals begin exploring their potential, they often notice a transformation in the way they view obstacles. Situations that once seemed like barriers begin to appear as opportunities for development. Instead of asking whether they are capable of succeeding, they begin asking what they can learn from the experience. This shift in perspective removes the emotional weight that previously surrounded effort. Failure becomes information rather than identity. Setbacks become adjustments rather than conclusions. The journey itself becomes valuable because it continuously reveals new aspects of personal capability. Another powerful outcome of awakening potential is the development of inner trust. As people gain experience expanding their abilities, they begin to trust their capacity to adapt and solve problems. This trust is not based on arrogance or unrealistic optimism. It is built through repeated evidence that growth is possible. Every time someone overcomes a challenge that once seemed intimidating, their understanding of themselves deepens. They begin to see that their limits were often assumptions rather than realities. This realization creates a form of confidence that remains stable even when circumstances change. Inner potential also connects deeply with purpose. When individuals realize that their abilities are far greater than they once believed, they begin asking more meaningful questions about how those abilities can be used. They start looking for ways to contribute, create, and influence the world around them. Life becomes more than a routine of survival or repetition. It becomes an unfolding opportunity to express talents, insights, and creativity in ways that can positively affect others. This sense of contribution gives direction to the growth process and transforms personal development into something that extends beyond the individual. The most important truth about inner potential is that it already exists within every human being. It is not reserved for a special group of extraordinary individuals. The difference between those who expand their potential and those who remain limited often lies in a single factor: belief. The moment a person begins to believe that their capabilities can evolve, the process of awakening begins. Curiosity grows stronger than doubt. Effort replaces hesitation. Exploration replaces fear. Slowly, the individual moves beyond the boundaries they once accepted as permanent. Within you, there exists far more ability than you have yet experienced. There are ideas waiting to be expressed, strengths waiting to be developed, and possibilities waiting to be explored. These potentials are not distant or unreachable. They are part of the living intelligence that already exists within your mind and consciousness. The moment you begin to acknowledge this truth and take action in alignment with it, the process of awakening truly begins. From that point forward, life no longer appears as a fixed path defined by the past. It becomes an open horizon of growth, where each step forward reveals another dimension of the limitless potential that has always been present within you. For many people, the journey of recognizing inner worth does not begin with a sudden transformation. It begins with a quiet moment of realization that something in life feels incomplete. This was the experience of a man named Willie Thompson. At 45 years old, Willie lived what most would describe as a stable and ordinary life. He worked as a middle manager in a large company, a position that provided security and a predictable routine. His days followed a familiar pattern: morning commutes through busy streets, long hours inside an office surrounded by reports and meetings, and evenings spent in a modest apartment where the silence often felt heavier than he expected. From the outside, nothing appeared wrong. Willie had a steady income, a comfortable place to live, and a small circle of acquaintances he occasionally met for drinks on weekends. Yet beneath this calm surface there was a persistent feeling that something essential was missing. Willie could not easily explain the source of this feeling. It was not exactly dissatisfaction with his job, nor was it a dramatic sense of failure. Instead, it was a quiet awareness that his life lacked a deeper sense of meaning. Each day seemed to repeat the one before it, and while there was nothing particularly painful about this routine, there was also very little that made him feel fully alive. He often wondered if this was simply what adulthood looked like: a gradual acceptance of stability in exchange for the dreams and curiosity that once existed earlier in life. Like many people, he tried not to think about it too much. Responsibilities filled his schedule, and the rhythm of daily obligations made it easy to postpone deeper questions about purpose and fulfillment. One rainy evening after leaving the office, Willie took a different route home to avoid heavy traffic. As he walked down a quiet street, he noticed a small bookstore he had never seen before. The shop looked old and slightly worn, with dim lights glowing softly through the windows. Normally, Willie would have continued walking without much interest, but something in the display caught his attention. In the center of the window rested a single book with a golden cover, and the title printed across it read, "You Are God." The words struck him as unusual, almost strange. At first, he smiled slightly at what he assumed was another piece of exaggerated spiritual writing, yet for reasons he could not fully explain. The title lingered in his mind. After a moment of hesitation, he stepped inside the bookstore. The shop was quiet, filled with the faint scent of paper and old wood. Shelves stretched across the room, holding hundreds of books that seemed to carry the thoughts and experiences of countless lives. Willie approached the counter and purchased the book almost impulsively. Later that night, as rain tapped softly against the windows of his apartment, he sat down and began reading. The message of the book was simple, yet unexpectedly powerful. It spoke about the inherent value that exists within every person, a source of creativity, strength, and spiritual energy that has been present since birth. The words suggested that human beings often overlook their own worth because they measure themselves by external standards rather than by the deeper essence that exists within them. At first, Willie found these ideas difficult to accept. For most of his life, he had evaluated himself according to familiar criteria: his job title, his income, his social status, and the stability of his relationships were the measurements he had used to judge whether he was doing well. By those standards, his life was average but acceptable. The idea that he possessed a deeper value independent of those factors felt unfamiliar and almost unrealistic. Yet as he continued reading, something within him began to respond. The book encouraged readers to spend a few minutes each day in quiet reflection, simply acknowledging their own worth without attaching it to any achievement or role. The exercise seemed simple enough, and although Willie felt slightly awkward about the idea, he decided to try it. The next morning, he sat quietly on his small balcony before leaving for work. The city was just beginning to wake, and the early light spread softly across the buildings. Willie closed his eyes and repeated a simple phrase to himself: "I have value. My existence carries meaning." At first, the words felt empty, almost mechanical. His mind quickly filled with doubts and distractions. Yet he continued the practice the following morning, and the morning after that. Gradually, the exercise began to feel less artificial. The words started to resonate in a deeper way, as if they were touching something that had been ignored for many years. As the weeks passed, Willie noticed subtle changes in his behavior. At work, he began speaking more openly during meetings, sharing ideas that he previously would have kept to himself. To his surprise, his colleagues responded with interest rather than criticism. This small encouragement strengthened his confidence. The quiet sense of worth he had been practicing each morning slowly began influencing how he carried himself throughout the day. He no longer felt invisible in conversations. Instead, he began participating more actively, offering suggestions and perspectives with a calm sense of assurance. Around the same time, Willie found himself remembering an experience from many years earlier. During his college days, he had volunteered at a local animal shelter. He recalled the sense of joy he felt while helping injured or frightened animals slowly regain trust in people. One particular memory stood out: a timid dog that had arrived at the shelter after being abandoned. The animal had been fearful and aggressive at first, but through patience and gentle care, Willie had helped it become calm enough to be adopted by a loving family. Remembering that moment awakened something inside him, a feeling of purpose he had not felt in years. Inspired by this memory, Willie decided to visit a nearby animal rescue center on the weekend. As soon as he stepped into the shelter, he felt a familiar connection return. The sounds of barking dogs and the smell of fresh hay reminded him of a part of himself that had long been neglected. He began volunteering regularly, helping staff members train and socialize animals that were considered difficult to adopt. One dog in particular captured his attention. The animal had been labeled aggressive and unmanageable, and many volunteers avoided working with it. Willie saw something different. He sensed fear beneath the dog's behavior and believed that with patience the animal could change. Over time, his intuition proved correct. Through calm persistence and gentle interaction, the dog slowly began to trust him. What had once seemed like aggression gradually transformed into cautious curiosity. Eventually, the dog was adopted by a family willing to continue the training Willie had begun. Watching the animal leave the shelter that day filled him with a profound sense of fulfillment. In that moment, Willie realized something important. By recognizing the hidden potential within that dog, he had also rediscovered the hidden value within himself. That realization marked the beginning of a deeper transformation. Willie started questioning whether his corporate career truly reflected who he was becoming. The more time he spent helping animals, the clearer his sense of purpose grew. After months of reflection, he made a decision that once would have seemed impossible: He left his management position and used his savings to start a small dog training and rehabilitation center. The transition was not easy. There were moments of uncertainty and financial pressure. Yet each challenge reinforced the understanding he had gradually developed. His worth was not defined by a job title or a salary. It was expressed through the impact he could create when he trusted the abilities and compassion that already lived within him. As his work continued, the center slowly gained recognition. Word spread among pet owners about his ability to help difficult dogs become calm and adoptable. More importantly, Willie experienced a sense of alignment that had been absent for most of his life. Each morning he woke with a feeling of anticipation rather than routine. The quiet man who once felt invisible in his own life had become someone who trusted his inner value enough to reshape his path. Through that journey, Willie discovered that recognizing one's worth is not merely a comforting idea. It is the beginning of a transformation that can redirect an entire life toward meaning, contribution, and genuine fulfillment. Desire is often misunderstood in the modern world. Many people have been taught to see desire as something dangerous, something that leads to disappointment, greed, or endless dissatisfaction. They are told that wanting too much can create suffering, that ambition can lead people away from peace, and that the safest path is to lower expectations and remain content with whatever life provides. While there is wisdom in learning gratitude and balance, this interpretation overlooks a deeper truth about the nature of desire itself. Desire is not merely a restless craving that appears randomly in the human mind. In many cases, desire is a signal, a quiet message arising from a deeper level of consciousness that invites a person to grow beyond the boundaries of their current life. Every human being has experienced moments when a powerful longing suddenly appears within them. Sometimes it is the desire to create something meaningful, to build a new path, to help others in a way that feels deeply personal, or to explore possibilities that have not yet taken form. These desires often arrive unexpectedly. They appear during quiet reflection, during moments of inspiration, or in situations where the heart feels unusually alive. When this happens, many people immediately question the feeling. They assume it must be unrealistic, impractical, or disconnected from reality. Yet what if these desires are not illusions? What if they are indications of potential that has not yet been expressed? Consider how a seed behaves in nature. A seed carries within it the complete blueprint of the tree it may eventually become. At first, the seed appears small and insignificant, but hidden inside is the possibility of growth that can one day transform an entire landscape. The same principle can be applied to human desire. Many desires begin as small internal impulses that seem easy to ignore. However, when they are nurtured with attention, belief, and action, they often grow into experiences that shape the direction of a person's life. What appears at first to be a simple wish may actually be the first sign of a larger transformation waiting to unfold. This understanding changes the way we interpret our deepest longings. Instead of viewing desire as a sign of lack, we can begin seeing it as evidence of potential. When someone feels drawn toward a particular vision, whether it is creating a new career, expressing creativity through art, starting a meaningful project, or contributing to a cause greater than themselves, that desire may reflect a capacity that already exists within them. The longing itself becomes an invitation to explore abilities that have not yet been fully developed. In this way, desire acts as a compass pointing toward growth. Human consciousness has a remarkable way of guiding individuals toward experiences that align with their deeper nature. Intuition, curiosity, and imagination all play roles in this process. When a person repeatedly feels drawn to a certain idea or direction, it is rarely random. The mind is responding to patterns of meaning that connect with personal values, interests, and strengths. These signals often appear long before a clear path becomes visible. At first, the vision may seem distant or impractical. Yet history shows that many remarkable journeys begin with nothing more than a persistent inner calling that refuses to disappear. However, many people hesitate to trust their desires because they fear disappointment. They worry that pursuing something meaningful may lead to failure or criticism. As a result, they silence the voice within that encourages exploration. Over time, this suppression can create a sense of emptiness. Life becomes predictable but uninspiring, safe but lacking vitality. The energy that once fueled curiosity and creativity gradually fades because it has not been allowed to express itself. In contrast, Individuals who learn to listen carefully to their deeper desires often discover that those desires contain valuable information about their direction in life. Listening to desire does not mean blindly chasing every impulse that appears. Some desires arise from temporary emotions or external influences. The key is learning to recognize the difference between superficial cravings and authentic longings that persist over time. Authentic desire has a distinct quality. It returns again and again, even when circumstances make it difficult to pursue. It carries a sense of meaning rather than simple excitement. Instead of draining energy, it tends to generate motivation and focus. These deeper desires often remain present for years, quietly reminding a person that there is more within them waiting to be expressed. When someone chooses to honor this kind of desire, a powerful shift begins to occur. The individual starts organizing their thoughts to actions and decisions around a vision that feels personally significant. Opportunities that once seemed invisible begin to appear. Conversations lead to new connections. Ideas lead to new projects. And experiences gradually shape a path that was previously unclear. This process does not happen because desire magically forces reality to change. It happens because the person has aligned their attention and effort with a direction that resonates deeply within them. Another important aspect of desire is its relationship with creativity. Creative expression often emerges from the urge to bring something new into the world. Artists, inventors, entrepreneurs, and innovators are frequently guided by a vision that begins as an internal longing. They feel compelled to create something that does not yet exist, whether it is a piece of music, a technological solution, a work of literature, or a movement that improves society. Without desire, this creative energy would remain dormant. Desire provides the emotional fuel that turns imagination into action. Desire also plays a role in personal evolution. As individuals grow and gain new experiences, their desires often change as well. A person who once focused primarily on personal success may later feel drawn toward helping others or contributing to a greater cause. This transformation reflects the natural development of awareness. The more someone understands themselves and the world around them, the more their desires begin aligning with deeper values. What begins as a personal aspiration may gradually expand into a broader vision that benefits many people. Understanding the true nature of desire allows us to approach our longings with curiosity rather than fear. Instead of dismissing them as unrealistic, we can ask meaningful questions. What ability might this desire be asking me to develop? What part of my potential is waiting to be expressed through this vision? What experiences could emerge if I allowed myself to explore this possibility? These questions open the door to discovery. They transform desire from a source of frustration into a source of guidance. Within every authentic desire lies the possibility of growth. It is not a guarantee that the path will always be easy or predictable, but it is an indication that life is inviting expansion. When you listen carefully to the quiet voice of desire, you may begin to notice that it is not demanding perfection or certainty. It simply asks for attention, courage, and willingness to explore. In that exploration, the deeper capacities of the human spirit begin to reveal themselves. Desire, therefore, should not be viewed as an enemy of peace, but as a messenger of potential. It reminds us that life is dynamic, creative, and constantly evolving. The longing you feel for something greater is not necessarily a sign that you are lacking. It may be evidence that there is more within you waiting to unfold. When you begin listening to that signal with awareness and intention, you take the first step toward discovering the possibilities that have been quietly calling your name all along. For many people, the idea of inner potential remains abstract until it becomes connected to a real experience. Stories have a unique way of revealing truths that theory alone cannot fully explain. One such story is the journey of a woman named Kendra, whose life changed the moment she began to trust the quiet treasure that had always existed within her. For years, Kendra carried a simple dream. She wanted to open her own bakery. It was not a grand or complicated ambition, but it was something that filled her with warmth every time she thought about it. From a young age, she loved baking. The process of mixing ingredients, shaping dough, and filling a room with the comforting scent of fresh bread gave her a sense of joy that few other activities could match. Despite this passion, Kendra never believed the dream was truly possible. Life had taken her down a more practical path. She spent many years working in different cafes and restaurants, learning recipes, improving her skills, and observing how successful kitchens operated. While she gained valuable experience, she always remained in supporting roles. The idea of owning a bakery felt distant, almost unrealistic. The cost of renting a space, purchasing equipment, hiring staff, and managing permits seemed overwhelming. Whenever the dream appeared in her mind, she quickly pushed it aside, telling herself that it was better to focus on stability rather than risk disappointment. Yet the desire never completely disappeared. Even after long days of work, she often found herself experimenting with new recipes at home. Her small kitchen became a place where creativity returned. She tried different combinations of ingredients, adjusted flavors, and imagined what it might feel like to serve customers in a bakery that carried her own name. These moments reminded her of something important. Beneath the routine of daily life, there was still a spark of inspiration that refused to fade. One evening, while walking home from work, Kendra passed a small bookstore and decided to step inside. She had no specific reason for entering the shop. It was simply a quiet place where she could relax for a few minutes before continuing her walk. As she wandered through the aisles, a particular book caught her attention. The title suggested that human beings possess creative power far greater than they usually realize. Curious about the idea, she purchased the book and began reading it later that night. The central message was both simple and challenging. It suggested that people often limit themselves by believing their dreams are distant possibilities rather than living realities. The book encouraged readers to imagine their desired life as if it were already unfolding. At first, Kendra approached the idea with skepticism. It seemed unrealistic to behave as though something existed when it clearly did not. Yet the concept continued to linger in her thoughts. The book suggested that belief influences perception and behavior. When someone truly believes a vision is possible, they begin acting in ways that move them closer to that reality. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, they begin preparing for the life they wish to create. After several days of reflection, Kendra decided to experiment with the idea. Each morning before leaving for work, she spent a few minutes imagining her bakery. She pictured the interior space, the wooden shelves filled with fresh bread and pastries, the warm light in the windows, and the quiet excitement of opening the doors to welcome customers. She imagined the smell of cinnamon rolls and coffee drifting through the air. Instead of thinking about the dream as something far away, she began speaking about it as though it were already part of her life. When friends asked about her interests, she described the bakery she intended to build one day, speaking with a calm sense of certainty rather than hesitation. Along with this change in perspective, Kendra began taking small practical steps. She wrote down ideas for the menu she would eventually offer. She sketched possible designs for the logo of the bakery. She researched the process of obtaining permits and creating a business plan. None of these actions immediately created a bakery, but they changed the way she related to her dream. The vision was no longer something she avoided thinking about. It became something she actively prepared for. At first, there were no dramatic results. Kendra continued working at the cafe as usual, and the dream still seemed distant. Yet something inside her had shifted. She felt more confident discussing her ideas and more attentive to opportunities around her. Over time, a series of unexpected events began to unfold. One afternoon, a customer overheard her talking about baking techniques and mentioned that he had once owned a small bakery before retiring. After several conversations, he offered to mentor her and share practical advice about starting a business. This guidance helped Kendra refine her plans and avoid mistakes that many beginners make. Not long afterward, she discovered a local program that offered small grants to support community businesses. Previously, she might have ignored such an opportunity, assuming it was meant for more experienced entrepreneurs. This time, she applied with confidence and was surprised to learn that her proposal was accepted. The funding was modest, but it provided enough support to begin searching for a suitable location. Soon after that, a friend informed her about an empty shop available for rent in a neighborhood known for its vibrant food culture. As these pieces gradually came together, Kendra realized that the path she once believed was impossible had begun forming step by step. Within several months, she signed a lease for the small space and started transforming it into the bakery she had imagined so many times. The process required hard work and persistence, but each day she felt a growing sense of purpose. On the morning the bakery finally opened its doors, she paused for a moment before welcoming the first customers. The smell of fresh bread filled the room exactly as she had imagined. In that quiet moment, she understood something powerful. The dream had not appeared suddenly from nowhere. It had grown from a seed of desire that she had carried for years. Kendra's story reveals an important truth about inner potential. The treasure within a person often appears first as a quiet longing, a vision that feels meaningful even when the path forward is unclear. When that vision is acknowledged rather than dismissed, it begins influencing perception, behavior, and decision-making. Opportunities that once seemed unrelated start connecting in unexpected ways. The individual becomes more aware, more prepared, and more willing to act when possibilities appear. In this way, the discovery of inner treasure is not a single dramatic event. It is a gradual unfolding that begins the moment someone chooses to believe that what they feel inside may be guiding them towards something real. Among all the words human beings use each day, few carry more influence than the simple phrase, "I am." These two words appear ordinary, yet they quietly shape the way individuals experience themselves and the world around them. Whenever a person says, "I am something," they are not merely describing a momentary feeling, they are declaring an identity. The words that follow this phrase begin forming the mental framework through which the mind interprets reality. Over time, these statements influence thoughts, decisions, behaviors, and expectations. In this way, the phrase "I am" acts like a blueprint for personal identity, guiding the direction in which a person's life gradually unfolds. From childhood, people begin forming "I am" statements, often without realizing how powerful they are. A child who repeatedly hears criticism may begin thinking, "I am not smart enough," or "I am not capable." Another child who receives encouragement may begin believing, "I am creative," or "I am confident." These statements become part of the internal dialogue that shapes how the mind approaches challenges. When individuals believe they are limited, the mind automatically searches for evidence that confirms that belief. When they believe they are capable, the mind begins looking for opportunities that support growth. In both cases, the same external world exists, yet the interpretation of that world changes according to the identity that has been formed. This process happens so gradually that most people rarely question it. They simply assume that their identity is fixed and permanent. They may say, "I am shy," "I am unlucky," "I am not talented," or "I am not the kind of person who succeeds in certain areas." These statements feel natural because they are repeated often. Yet repetition does not make them permanently true. They are interpretations created from past experiences, and like all interpretations, they can be changed. The moment a person becomes aware of how these statements shape their perception, they gain the ability to redefine them. The phrase "I am" is powerful because it connects directly with the deepest level of human awareness. When someone speaks these words, they are affirming something about their existence itself. For this reason, the mind tends to accept "I am" statements more easily than other forms of suggestion. If a person says, "I might succeed one day," the mind treats it as a possibility. But when someone declares, "I am capable," the statement begins influencing how they see themselves immediately. The identity shifts first, and behavior gradually follows. Consider how this principle operates in everyday life. When someone believes, "I am not good at public speaking," they approach any speaking opportunity with tension and hesitation. Their focus moves toward avoiding mistakes rather than expressing ideas clearly. The nervous energy often leads to the very difficulties they feared. The experience then reinforces the belief that speaking is not their strength. The cycle continues because the identity remains unchanged. Now imagine that the same person begins shifting the statement. Instead of repeating, "I am not good at speaking," they begin affirming, "I am learning to communicate clearly and confidently." At first, the new statement may feel unfamiliar. Yet over time, it begins influencing behavior. The person becomes more willing to practice, more open to feedback, and less intimidated by the possibility of improvement. Gradually, the identity evolves. This transformation does not happen because words alone possess magical power. It happens because language shapes attention and expectation. The human mind constantly searches for patterns that confirm existing beliefs. When someone identifies themselves as capable, creative, disciplined, or resilient, the mind begins noticing situations where those qualities can be expressed. Behavior aligns with identity. Small actions accumulate, and those actions eventually produce tangible results. In this way, the phrase "I am" acts as a seed that influences the direction of personal development. Another important aspect of "I am" statements is their emotional impact. Identity is not formed only by logic. It is reinforced through feeling. When a person repeatedly declares an empowering identity and allows themselves to feel the meaning of those words, the mind begins forming stronger associations with that identity. Confidence grows not through force but through familiarity. The individual becomes comfortable seeing themselves as someone who possesses strength, intelligence, creativity, or leadership. This emotional alignment strengthens motivation and persistence, two qualities that are essential for long-term growth. Many people underestimate how frequently they use negative I am statements throughout their day. Simple comments such as, "I am always late," "I am terrible with numbers," or "I am just an average person" may appear harmless. Yet each repetition reinforces a limited view of identity. Over time, these small statements accumulate and shape the expectations a person carries about their future. When individuals become aware of this pattern, they gain the opportunity to transform it. By choosing language that reflects possibility rather than limitation, they begin constructing a new mental environment in which growth becomes natural. This does not mean ignoring challenges or pretending that weaknesses do not exist. Authentic transformation requires honesty and self-awareness. The purpose of empowering I am statements is not to deny reality, but to open space for development. Instead of saying, "I am incapable," a person might say, "I am improving." Instead of saying, "I am not creative," they might say, "I am discovering new ways to express ideas." These subtle shifts keep the mind engaged with progress rather than trapped in fixed definitions. Over time, consistent use of empowering identity statements begins influencing many areas of life. Decisions become more intentional because they align with the identity a person is building. Habits change because actions are chosen to support the new self-perception. Relationships improve because individuals communicate with greater confidence and authenticity. Opportunities that once felt intimidating become invitations to practice the qualities a person is claiming for themselves. The external results may appear gradual, yet they originate from a fundamental shift in how someone understands who they are. The phrase, "I am," therefore, carries responsibility as well as power. Every time these words are spoken, they contribute to the ongoing story a person tells about themselves. That story influences the direction of their thoughts, their actions, and their future. When individuals become conscious of this process, they gain the ability to guide their identity deliberately rather than unconsciously repeating inherited beliefs. They begin choosing words that reflect the potential they wish to develop rather than the limitations they wish to escape. Within each person exists a vast range of abilities waiting to be expressed. The language used to describe oneself either restricts or releases that potential. By becoming mindful of the identities formed through the phrase, "I am," individuals take an important step toward shaping their own development. The words may appear simple, yet their influence is profound. When used with awareness, they become tools that help transform possibility into lived experience. One of the most transformative ideas a person can encounter is the principle of believing that what they desire has already been received. At first, this concept may sound confusing or even unrealistic, because it appears to contradict the way people normally think about achieving goals. Most individuals believe that they must first see evidence before allowing themselves to believe in success. They assume that belief should follow results rather than precede them. Yet throughout human history, many extraordinary achievements have been guided by the opposite pattern. The individuals who created new inventions, built great organizations, or transformed entire fields often carried an unwavering belief in their vision long before it became visible to others. They held a clear inner certainty that what they imagined was not merely a possibility but an eventual reality. To understand this principle, it is helpful to consider the relationship between belief and behavior. When a person truly believes something is possible, they naturally begin acting in ways that move them closer to that outcome. Their attention becomes focused on opportunities rather than obstacles. Their decisions reflect confidence instead of hesitation. Even when progress is slow, they continue moving forward because their belief provides emotional stability. In contrast, someone who doubts their vision often abandons effort at the first sign of difficulty. The difference between these two individuals is not always talent or intelligence. It is the internal conviction that shapes how they respond to circumstances. Believing that you have received does not mean ignoring reality or pretending that effort is unnecessary. Instead, it involves aligning your inner state with the experience you wish to create. When a person imagines their desired outcome as something already unfolding, they begin generating the emotions and attitudes associated with success. Feelings of gratitude, confidence, and excitement start influencing their perspective. These emotions alter how the mind interprets situations, rather than seeing barriers everywhere. The individual begins noticing paths that were previously overlooked. The change begins internally but gradually influences the external actions that follow. Consider how athletes often use mental rehearsal before major competitions. Many successful performers visualize themselves executing movements with precision, crossing the finish line, or achieving their desired result. This practice is not simply positive thinking. It conditions the mind to experience success as something familiar rather than distant. By repeatedly imagining the outcome, the athlete trains their focus, emotions, and reactions. When the real moment arrives, their mind and body respond with greater confidence because the experience has already been rehearsed internally. In a similar way, believing that you have received conditions the mind to align with possibility rather than doubt. Another way to understand this principle is through the influence of expectation. Human perception is strongly shaped by what we anticipate. When someone expects failure, they often interpret neutral events as confirmation that things are going wrong. A small challenge becomes evidence that the goal is unreachable. Motivation declines and effort gradually fades. When someone expects success, the interpretation of events changes. Challenges are seen as temporary obstacles rather than final conclusions. The person remains engaged with the process because their belief continues supporting forward movement. In both situations, the same external conditions may exist, yet expectation alters the meaning attached to those conditions. Believing that you have received also strengthens emotional resilience. The path toward meaningful achievements rarely unfolds without setbacks or uncertainty. There may be periods when progress appears invisible or when circumstances become more difficult than anticipated. During these moments, belief acts as a stabilizing force. Instead of interpreting temporary delays as failure, the individual maintains the perspective that the vision is still unfolding. This attitude does not eliminate challenges, but it prevents discouragement from interrupting the journey. Gratitude plays an important role in this mindset. When people express gratitude as though their desired outcome is already emerging, they shift attention away from scarcity and toward abundance. Gratitude signals to the mind that something valuable is already present. This emotional state reduces anxiety and increases openness to opportunity. A grateful mind tends to be more creative, more collaborative, and more capable of noticing possibilities that might otherwise remain hidden. In this way, gratitude supports the belief that the desired outcome is moving closer. However, this principle is not about passive waiting. Belief must always be accompanied by action. When a person genuinely believes that a goal is attainable, they naturally begin preparing for it. They learn new skills, gather information, build connections, and make decisions that align with the future they expect. Their actions demonstrate that they are ready to receive the opportunity when it appears. Without this alignment, belief would remain an abstract idea rather than a force that shapes real experiences. Another important aspect of believing that you have received is patience. The mind often wants immediate results, yet many meaningful transformations require time. Seeds planted in fertile soil do not become trees overnight. They develop gradually through consistent nourishment and favorable conditions. In the same way, visions grow through continued attention and effort. Belief provides the patience necessary to remain committed while the process unfolds. It reminds the individual that progress may be invisible at times, yet still active beneath the surface. The power of this principle becomes clearer when individuals begin applying it to everyday situations. A person who believes they will develop a successful career approaches learning with enthusiasm and persistence. Someone who believes they will build meaningful relationships communicates with openness and respect. Someone who believes they will create something valuable dedicates time and energy to refining their ideas. In each case, belief acts as the foundation for consistent behavior that eventually produces results. Believing that you have received is therefore less about convincing the world to change and more about transforming the inner environment from which actions emerge. When the mind operates from certainty rather than doubt, it becomes more attentive, resourceful, and resilient. Opportunities that once appeared random begin aligning with preparation and intention. The person becomes an active participant in shaping their circumstances rather than a passive observer waiting for permission to begin. Within this principle lies an invitation to trust the creative relationship between thought, emotion, and action. By imagining success as something already in motion, individuals unlock the motivation and clarity required to move toward it. The journey may still require effort, learning, and patience, but the path becomes guided by confidence rather than fear. In this way, believing that you have received becomes not a denial of reality, but a powerful strategy for shaping the reality that gradually unfolds as a person begins to understand their inner worth, their potential, and the power of belief. Another transformation quietly begins to unfold in the way they see the world around them. The focus slowly shifts from the individual self to the deeper connection that exists between all things. Many spiritual traditions describe this transformation as the ability to perceive the presence of the divine in everyday life. To see God in everything does not mean interpreting the world through rigid doctrines or religious labels. It means recognizing that life itself carries a sacred quality, a living intelligence and presence that flows through people, nature, and every moment of existence. When this awareness begins to develop, the way a person thinks, acts, and relates to others naturally begins to change. For most people, the world appears divided into ordinary experiences and spiritual ideas. Daily routines such as working, walking through the city, speaking with friends, or helping someone in need are often viewed as separate from deeper meaning. Yet when someone begins to recognize the presence of the divine in all things, these ordinary moments gain new significance. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to express awareness, compassion, and integrity. The individual no longer sees life as a series of random events, but as a living environment where meaning can be discovered in the simplest actions. Seeing God in everything also transforms the way people treat one another. When individuals believe that life is merely a competition for resources or recognition, they may approach others with suspicion, comparison, or indifference. But when a person begins recognizing a sacred essence within every human being, their perspective changes. They start to see others not simply as strangers or rivals, but as fellow expressions of the same living consciousness. This recognition naturally encourages kindness, patience, and empathy. It becomes more difficult to harm others when you understand that their inner value is not fundamentally different from your own. This shift in perception is closely connected to the idea of righteousness. Righteousness in this context does not mean strict obedience to external rules or moral codes imposed by authority. Instead, it refers to a natural alignment between one's actions and the deeper awareness of truth and compassion. When someone perceives the sacred nature of life, ethical behavior arises almost spontaneously. The desire to act with honesty, fairness, and respect becomes an expression of understanding rather than an obligation enforced by fear of punishment. Many people struggle with ethical decisions because they rely solely on external guidelines to determine what is right or wrong. Rules may be helpful, but they cannot anticipate every situation a person will encounter. When individuals cultivate the ability to see the divine in everything, they develop an inner compass that guides their choices. This inner awareness helps them sense when an action supports harmony and when it creates harm. Instead of constantly asking what they are allowed to do, they begin asking what reflects the highest understanding of life they can embody. This perspective also encourages humility. Recognizing the presence of the divine in all things reminds individuals that they are part of something greater than their personal desires or achievements. While each person carries unique gifts and potential, those gifts exist within a larger web of life that connects everyone. Humility does not diminish personal power. Instead, it balances that power with responsibility. When someone understands that their actions influence the wider world, they become more mindful about how they use their abilities. Nature provides a clear illustration of this interconnected presence. A forest is not simply a collection of individual trees growing independently. Beneath the surface, the roots of the trees intertwine, sharing nutrients and information through complex underground networks. Each tree appears separate, yet all participate in a living system that supports the health of the entire ecosystem. Human life operates in a similar way. Individuals may appear separate on the surface, but their thoughts, its actions, and relationships continually influence the collective environment in which they live. When people become aware of this connection, they often feel a deeper sense of purpose. Life is no longer viewed only through the lens of personal success. It becomes an opportunity to contribute to the well-being of others and to the health of the larger community. Acts of kindness, honesty, and generosity are no longer seen as small gestures. They become expressions of the understanding that every person and every moment carries significance. Even simple actions such as listening attentively, offering help, or speaking with sincerity can create ripples that extend far beyond the immediate situation. Another important aspect of seeing the divine in everything is the ability to find meaning during difficult experiences. Challenges are an unavoidable part of life, and during painful moments, it can be difficult to perceive anything positive. Yet individuals who cultivate spiritual awareness often discover that hardship can deepen understanding. Difficult experiences can reveal strengths that might otherwise remain hidden. They can inspire compassion for others who face similar struggles. They can also remind people of what truly matters, guiding them away from superficial concerns toward more meaningful priorities. Living with this awareness does not require withdrawing from ordinary life. In fact, it encourages greater engagement with the world. Work, relationships, creativity, and service all become ways to express a deeper understanding of existence. The goal is not to escape reality, but to participate in it more consciously. When people recognize the sacred presence in everyday life, they approach their responsibilities with greater care and attention. Even routine tasks can become meaningful when performed with awareness and intention. Over time, this perspective gradually transforms the way a person experiences life. Moments that once felt ordinary begin revealing quiet beauty. Encounters with others become opportunities for connection rather than transactions. The individual develops a sense of gratitude for the simple fact of being alive and participating in the unfolding of existence. This gratitude strengthens the desire to live with integrity, because actions that harm others begin to feel inconsistent with the awareness that all life shares a common source. Seeing God in everything ultimately invites individuals to live with greater consciousness. It encourages them to treat each moment as an opportunity to express their highest values. Righteousness then becomes not a rigid system of rules, but a living practice of awareness, compassion, and responsibility. When a person consistently chooses actions that reflect this understanding, their life gradually aligns with a deeper sense of harmony. In this harmony, they discover that spiritual insight is not separate from daily living. It is present within every decision, every interaction, and every step taken with awareness of the sacred life that flows through all things. Sometimes the deepest lessons about life appear in the simplest situations. Wisdom does not always arrive through complex philosophy or dramatic events. Often it emerges through small experiences that quietly reshape the way we see the world. This was the case for a young boy named Tommy. Tommy was 10 years old and lived in a busy city with his parents and younger sister. Like many children, his life was filled with school, homework, games, and the everyday curiosity that comes with growing up. He was generally kind and well-behaved, yet he often struggled to understand the difference between right and wrong in complicated situations. There were moments when he wanted to make the right choice but felt uncertain about what that choice truly was. One weekend, Tommy's grandmother came to visit. She was a gentlewoman named Rose, known in the family for her calm voice and thoughtful perspective on life. She had a way of explaining ideas that made even difficult concepts feel simple and clear. That afternoon, Tommy and his grandmother sat together in the backyard while a soft breeze moved through the trees. The city sounds faded slightly in the distance, creating a quiet moment that felt perfect for conversation. After sitting silently for a few minutes, Tommy finally asked a question that had been on his mind. He looked at his grandmother with a serious expression and said, "Grandma, how do you always know what the right thing to do is?" Grandma Rose smiled warmly before answering. She did not immediately give him a direct rule or instruction. Instead, she asked him to close his eyes for a moment. Tommy did as she asked. Curious about what she might say next, she spoke slowly and gently, asking him to imagine that every person and every living thing around him was filled with a warm light. She described this light as something sacred, a quiet presence that exists inside every human being, every animal, and every part of nature. She explained that some people call this presence God, while others simply call it life or spirit. The name itself was not the most important part. What mattered was learning to recognize that the same light exists in everyone. Tommy opened his eyes and looked around the garden. At first, the idea seemed strange. He saw the same trees, the same flowers, and the same old wooden fence that had always been there. Nothing appeared different on the surface. Yet his grandmother encouraged him to look again, not with his eyes alone, but with his imagination and his sense of empathy. She told him that when people begin to see the sacred value in everything around them, their choices naturally begin to change. Instead of asking what they are allowed to do, they begin asking what honors the life that exists in others. Over the next few weeks, Tommy decided to experiment with what his grandmother had suggested. At first, it felt unusual, almost like a game of imagination. One afternoon, he paused beside a small flower growing near the sidewalk outside his home. Instead of walking past it without noticing, he took a moment to observe its color and delicate shape. He realized that something so small had grown quietly through the cracks in the concrete, reaching toward the sunlight without anyone paying attention. The simple act of noticing it filled him with a quiet appreciation he had never felt before. A few days later, Tommy saw a stray cat wandering near the alley behind his house. Normally, he would have ignored the animal or tried to scare it away. But this time, he remembered his grandmother's words. If the same light existed in every living thing, then this cat was not just an inconvenience. It was another creature, sharing the same world. Tommy went inside his house and returned with a small bowl of water and some leftover food. The cat approached cautiously, yet after a few moments it began eating peacefully. Watching the animal relax made Tommy feel unexpectedly happy. The most difficult test of his new perspective happened at school. There was a boy in his class named Alex who often bullied other students. Many children avoided him because his behavior could be intimidating. Tommy had always stayed away from Alex, believing it was safer not to interact with him. One afternoon during recess, Tommy noticed Alex sitting alone on the edge of the playground. For a moment, Tommy felt the familiar hesitation. Then he remembered what his grandmother had said about seeing the sacred light in everyone, even those who seemed difficult to understand. Taking a deep breath, Tommy walked over and asked if Alex wanted to play basketball. Alex looked surprised and slightly suspicious at first, but after a moment he agreed. As they played together, Tommy noticed something he had never considered before. Alex seemed less aggressive when someone treated him with respect rather than fear. They did not become close friends immediately. Yet that simple interaction changed the dynamic between them. Alex stopped targeting Tommy in the hallway, and over time the tension between them gradually softened. As Tommy continued practicing this new way of seeing the world, his choices became clearer. When he faced situations where he could cheat on a test or blame someone else for a mistake, he remembered the idea that the same sacred presence existed within everyone involved. Acting unfairly began to feel uncomfortable because it contradicted the understanding he was developing. Doing the right thing was no longer about avoiding punishment. It was about respecting the shared dignity that connects all people. Tommy's parents began noticing subtle changes in his behavior. He became more patient with his younger sister, more helpful around the house, and more thoughtful in his interactions with others. When they asked him what had inspired this change, he simply repeated the lesson his grandmother had shared. He explained that when you remember that everyone carries something sacred inside them, it becomes easier to choose kindness instead of harm. Months later, when Grandma Rose visited again, she listened proudly as Tommy described the experiences he had been having. She reminded him that this awareness was not a one-time lesson, but a lifelong practice. Seeing the sacred in others requires attention and empathy, especially during moments when anger or frustration appear. Yet each time someone chooses compassion instead of judgment, they strengthen their connection to the deeper truth of life. Through this simple lesson, Tommy discovered that morality does not begin with rules written on paper. It begins with perception. When people see the world as a collection of separate individuals competing for advantage, their actions often reflect that separation. But when they recognize the shared light that exists in every being, their behavior naturally moves toward respect, fairness, and kindness. In this way, the ability to see the divine in everything becomes the foundation of a life, guided not by fear of consequences, but by genuine understanding. As a person begins to recognize their inner worth, awaken their potential, understand the power of belief, and perceive the sacred presence in all things, another realization slowly emerges. Life is not simply a series of random events unfolding without meaning. Beneath the visible surface of everyday experiences, there appears to be a deeper order, a quiet intelligence that moves through the universe and shapes the flow of existence. Many spiritual traditions refer to this as the will of God, not as a rigid command imposed from outside, but as a harmonious current that guides life toward growth, balance, and evolution. To live in alignment with this higher flow does not mean losing individuality or surrendering personal freedom. Instead, it means recognizing that the human journey unfolds within a larger field of intelligence that invites cooperation rather than resistance. Most people spend much of their lives trying to control every detail of their future. They plan carefully, calculate outcomes, and attempt to manage uncertainty through constant effort. While planning and responsibility are valuable, excessive control can create tension and anxiety. When individuals believe that every result depends entirely on their own force of will, they often feel overwhelmed by the unpredictability of life. Yet, when someone begins to trust that there is a deeper pattern guiding existence, a new form of peace becomes possible. Instead of fighting against every unexpected circumstance, they begin learning how to move with the current of events rather than against it. Understanding the idea of God's perfect will begins with recognizing that human perception is limited. People often judge situations immediately as good or bad according to their short-term expectations. A job opportunity may appear disappointing because it does not match a previous plan. Yet later it might lead to connections that transform a person's career. A difficult challenge may seem like an obstacle that blocks progress, yet it can develop strength, patience, or insight that would never have appeared otherwise. When viewed from a broader perspective, many events that initially feel confusing eventually reveal deeper purpose. Living in harmony with a higher flow therefore requires a shift in perspective. Instead of interpreting every unexpected situation as a mistake or failure, individuals begin asking what this moment might be, inviting them to learn. Challenges become opportunities to develop qualities that would otherwise remain dormant. Patience grows through delay. Resilience grows through adversity. And wisdom grows through reflection on experiences that once seemed difficult to understand. In this way, life gradually reveals itself as a teacher guiding individuals toward greater awareness. Another important aspect of aligning with God's perfect will is the role of intuition. Intuition is often described as a quiet inner guidance that arises without logical explanation. It may appear as a feeling that encourages someone to pursue a certain direction or avoid another. While intuition should not replace thoughtful reasoning, it can serve as a valuable complement to rational thinking. When individuals become more attentive to their inner awareness, they often notice subtle signals guiding their decisions. These signals may appear as a sudden sense of clarity about a path forward, a feeling of peace when considering one choice rather than another, or an instinctive hesitation when something does not feel aligned. Synchronicity is another phenomenon many people notice when they begin trusting the flow of life. Synchronicity refers to meaningful coincidences that seem to connect events in surprising ways. For example, someone may begin thinking about a new opportunity and soon encounter information or people that help make that opportunity possible. While such experiences can sometimes be explained by increased awareness and attention, they often create the feeling that life is responding to intention. When individuals remain open to these moments, they begin recognizing patterns that suggest a deeper coordination within their experiences. Trusting this larger process does not mean becoming passive or abandoning responsibility. Action remains essential. The difference lies in the spirit with which action is taken. Instead of forcing outcomes through anxiety and fear, individuals act with clarity and openness. They make decisions, pursue goals, and contribute their efforts while remaining flexible about how results unfold. This balance between effort and trust allows people to remain engaged with life without becoming overwhelmed by the need to control every outcome. Humility also plays a significant role in this alignment. Recognizing that life operates within a larger intelligence reminds individuals that they are not the sole authors of every circumstance. While human beings possess remarkable creative capacity, they also participate in a vast network of relationships and events that extend far beyond personal awareness. Humility allows individuals to appreciate this interconnectedness. It encourages gratitude for the opportunities that arise and respect for the complexity of the world in which they live. When people live with this awareness, they often discover a deeper sense of meaning in their daily lives. Work becomes more than a task performed for survival. It becomes an opportunity to express one's abilities in ways that contribute to the greater whole. Relationships become more than exchanges of convenience. They become connections through which individuals learn, grow, and support one another. Even simple moments such as walking through nature or observing the rhythms of the day can inspire appreciation for the intelligence that sustains life. Another powerful result of living in alignment with God's perfect will is the reduction of unnecessary fear. When individuals trust that life contains purpose beyond immediate appearances, they become less intimidated by uncertainty. The future remains unknown, yet it no longer feels threatening. Instead, it becomes a space of possibility where new experiences can unfold. This perspective allows people to approach change with curiosity rather than resistance. Over time, this attitude cultivates a profound sense of inner peace. The individual no longer feels isolated within an unpredictable world. They begin experiencing themselves as participants in a living process that continually invites growth. Decisions are still made, responsibilities are still honored, and effort is still required. Yet the emotional tone of life becomes calmer and more balanced. Trust replaces constant tension. To live in harmony with a higher flow is therefore not about surrendering ambition or withdrawing from the world. It is about recognizing that personal goals and universal movement can coexist. When individuals align their intentions with values such as compassion, integrity, creativity, and service, their actions naturally resonate with the deeper current of life. In that alignment, they often discover that progress unfolds more smoothly than when driven purely by pressure or fear. God's perfect will can be understood as the unfolding harmony of life itself, a dynamic process guiding individuals toward greater awareness and connection. By listening to intuition, remaining open to unexpected paths, and acting with sincerity and humility, people gradually learn how to cooperate with this flow. In doing so, they experience life not as a chaotic struggle but as a meaningful journey where each moment carries the potential to reveal wisdom and purpose. As individuals begin exploring deeper spiritual awareness, they often discover that the way they speak and think about the divine carries more influence than they previously realized. Words are not merely sounds used for communication. They shape perception, intention, and emotional connection with the ideas they represent. When people speak about God, life, or the sacred aspects of existence, the attitude behind those words determines how deeply those ideas are experienced. If the language used is careless or casual, the mind may begin treating the concept itself as ordinary. But when people approach the idea of the divine with reverence and mindfulness, something subtle begins to shift within their awareness. The sacred becomes not a distant theory but a living presence that gradually influences daily life. Many individuals grow up using the word God in casual expressions without thinking about its meaning. Phrases such as, "Oh my God," or "Thank God," are often spoken automatically during moments of surprise or relief. While these expressions are common in everyday language, they sometimes reveal how easily powerful ideas can become routine. When something sacred becomes routine, it can lose the sense of depth that once inspired reflection and gratitude. This does not mean that people must speak with constant formality, but it does suggest that awareness of language can help restore a deeper connection with the values and ideas those words represent. The story of a woman named Sophia illustrates how a small change in awareness can transform a person's spiritual experience. Sophia had always considered herself a thoughtful and open-minded individual. She believed in the existence of a higher power, but had never committed herself to any particular religious tradition. Her spirituality was gentle and informal. She enjoyed reading about philosophy and occasionally attended meditation gatherings. Yet she rarely reflected deeply on how her everyday habits influenced her relationship with the divine. One summer, Sophia decided to spend several weeks at a quiet retreat center located in the countryside. She hoped that time away from the constant movement of city life would allow her to reflect more deeply on her purpose and direction. The retreat welcomed visitors from many spiritual backgrounds and encouraged open conversation about personal beliefs. During her stay, Sophia met an older woman named Esther, who seemed to carry an unusual sense of calm and wisdom. Esther spoke slowly and listened carefully, as though each word and moment deserved attention. One evening, Sophia and Esther sat together in a garden overlooking a peaceful valley. The sun was setting and the sky was slowly changing colors as the day moved toward night. During their conversation, Sophia shared her uncertainty about spiritual life. She explained that although she believed in a higher power, she often felt disconnected from it during the routines of everyday life. Esther listened patiently and then asked a question that surprised her. She asked Sophia how often she used the word God during ordinary conversation. Sophia thought about the question and realized she used the word frequently without much attention. Expressions such as, "Oh my God," had become natural parts of her speech. Esther gently suggested that Sophia try a simple experiment. For the next few weeks, she should use the word God only when she truly intended to express gratitude, wonder, or reverence. In other situations, she could choose different expressions that did not involve the sacred name. The purpose was not to create rules, but to cultivate awareness. Esther explained that when a person treats sacred language with intention, the mind begins associating that language with deeper meaning. Sophia decided to try the experiment. During the first few days, she noticed how often she almost used the phrase automatically. Each time she paused and replaced the expression with another word. This small act of mindfulness made her more aware of her thoughts and reactions throughout the day. Gradually, she began reserving the word God for moments when she truly felt appreciation for life. One morning, while watching the sunrise over the hills, she softly whispered, "Thank you, God." The words carried a sense of sincerity that surprised her. Instead of feeling like a casual phrase, they felt like a genuine expression of gratitude. As the days passed, Sophia noticed that this simple practice was influencing other areas of her life. Because she was paying closer attention to her language, she also began paying closer attention to her thoughts and actions. Her meditation sessions felt deeper because she approached them with greater intention. Conversations with others became more thoughtful because she listened more carefully before speaking. Even ordinary activities such as walking through nature or sharing a meal with other guests began to feel more meaningful. Toward the end of her stay, Sophia returned to the garden to speak with Esther again. She explained that the experiment had created an unexpected shift in her awareness. By treating the word God with reverence, she had begun seeing the sacred presence in many aspects of life that she previously overlooked. Gratitude appeared more often in her thoughts. Patience grew in her interactions with others. Moments that once felt routine now carried a quiet sense of significance. Esther smiled and explained that this transformation was not caused by the word itself, but by the awareness it inspired. When people approach the divine with respect and mindfulness, they remind themselves that life contains depth beyond immediate appearances. That awareness gradually influences how they think, speak, and act. Reverence becomes a doorway through which deeper understanding can enter daily life. Sophia carried this lesson with her after leaving the retreat. Back in the city, she continued practicing mindful language. Over time, friends and colleagues began noticing a calm confidence in the way she communicated. She spoke with clarity and kindness, choosing words carefully rather than reacting impulsively. When people asked about the change, she simply explained that she had learned to treat certain words with respect because they represented something sacred. The lesson Sophia discovered extends beyond language alone. It reminds us that awareness transforms ordinary habits into meaningful practices. When individuals treat the sacred aspects of life with intention, they strengthen their connection to values such as gratitude, humility, and compassion. Even small acts of mindfulness can gradually reshape perception and deepen spiritual understanding. Reverence for the divine, therefore, does not require complex rituals or strict traditions. It begins with awareness. By speaking thoughtfully, by expressing gratitude sincerely, and by recognizing the sacred presence that exists within everyday experiences, individuals cultivate a deeper relationship with life itself. In this awareness, the ordinary becomes meaningful, and the simple act of mindful speech becomes a reminder that every moment holds the potential for connection with something greater than ourselves. Understanding an idea can inspire the mind, but true transformation begins only when understanding turns into action. Many people spend years reading books, listening to lectures, and exploring new concepts about personal growth and spiritual awareness. These experiences can provide valuable insight and inspiration, yet knowledge alone does not change a person's life. Ideas remain theoretical until they are practiced in the rhythm of daily living. The distance between knowing and becoming is bridged through consistent action. Without that bridge, even the most powerful wisdom can remain dormant, like a seed that has never been planted in soil. The mind often enjoys collecting knowledge because learning new ideas can feel exciting and meaningful. A person may discover a philosophy that explains the importance of belief, inner worth, compassion, or purpose, and for a moment, that discovery creates motivation. Yet, when daily responsibilities return, the inspiration can gradually fade if it is not supported by practical steps. This pattern happens frequently because the human mind sometimes confuses understanding with change. It assumes that recognizing a truth automatically means that truth will shape behavior. In reality, transformation requires repetition. Just as muscles grow through repeated exercise, awareness grows through repeated practice. Taking action does not require dramatic changes at the beginning. In fact, meaningful growth usually begins with small and simple steps. When someone learns about the power of positive identity statements, they can begin by observing the language they use about themselves each day. When they learn about the importance of compassion, they can begin by practicing patience in everyday conversations. When they understand the idea of believing in their potential, They can start by taking one small action toward a goal they have been postponing. These steps may appear modest, yet each action reinforces the new perspective and strengthens the connection between knowledge and behavior. Consistency plays a crucial role in this process. One action performed once may create temporary inspiration, but repeated actions gradually reshape habits and identity. The brain adapts to patterns that occur regularly. When a person practices a new way of thinking or acting every day, those patterns begin forming stronger neural pathways in the mind. Over time, the new behavior becomes more natural and requires less effort. What once felt unfamiliar slowly becomes part of the person's character. This is why consistent practice is often more powerful than occasional bursts of motivation. Another important element of practical transformation is patience. Many people expect immediate results when they begin applying new ideas to their lives. When those results do not appear quickly, they may become discouraged and abandon the process. Yet meaningful change rarely happens instantly. Just as a seed planted in soil requires time, water, and sunlight before it grows into a tree, personal development unfolds gradually through steady effort. Each small action contributes to the larger process, even when progress is not immediately visible. Practical application also reveals insights that theoretical study cannot provide. When individuals begin applying new principles to real situations, they encounter challenges that deepen their understanding. For example, a person may read about the importance of maintaining calm during conflict, yet only through actual conversations with others do they learn how difficult and valuable that practice can be. Each experience becomes a lesson that refines awareness. In this way, action transforms abstract ideas into living wisdom. Another benefit of active practice is the development of confidence. Confidence grows not from merely thinking about possibilities, but from experiencing progress firsthand. Each time someone takes action aligned with their values, they strengthen their belief in their ability to create change. Even small successes provide evidence that effort matters. This evidence gradually replaces the doubts that once prevented action. Confidence, therefore, becomes the natural result of consistent engagement with growth, rather than something that must appear before action begins. It is also important to remember that mistakes are an inevitable part of the learning process. When people begin practicing new habits or perspectives, they may occasionally fall back into old patterns. Instead of interpreting these moments as failure, they can view them as reminders that growth requires persistence. Every attempt provides feedback that helps refine understanding. When someone remains patient and continues practicing despite temporary setbacks, the new habits eventually become stronger than the old ones. Action also strengthens purpose. When individuals begin applying meaningful ideas in their daily lives, they start noticing the impact their behavior has on others. Simple actions such as offering encouragement, showing patience, or pursuing a meaningful project can inspire positive change within a community. This realization deepens motivation because growth becomes connected not only to personal improvement, but also to contribution. The individual recognizes that their efforts influence the environment around them. Another powerful aspect of practical transformation is that it brings clarity. When people actively engage with their goals and values, they begin discovering what truly matters to them. Some ideas that once seemed exciting may lose their appeal when tested in real life, while other directions may become more meaningful than expected. Action, therefore, acts as a form of exploration. It helps individuals refine their vision and align their efforts with the paths that genuinely resonate with their deeper purpose. Daily life offers countless opportunities for this kind of practice. Every conversation, every decision, and every challenge becomes a moment where awareness can be applied. Instead of waiting for ideal conditions, people can begin using ordinary situations as training grounds for growth. A stressful moment at work can become a chance to practice patience. A creative idea can become a project that develops new skills. A desire to help others can become a simple act of kindness that brightens someone's day. Each moment contains potential for meaningful action. Ultimately, the difference between knowledge and transformation lies in engagement. Knowledge shows the direction, but action moves the journey forward. When individuals consistently apply the principles they learn, those principles gradually become part of their character. Over time, the gap between what they believe and how they live begins to disappear. Their actions reflect their understanding, and their understanding deepens through their actions. The path of personal and spiritual growth therefore invites participation rather than observation. Ideas are not meant to remain distant concepts admired from afar. They are invitations to experiment, explore, and evolve. By practicing small steps each day, individuals cultivate habits that shape their future. In this process, knowledge becomes wisdom, and wisdom becomes a living force that guides the way they think, speak, and act in the world. One of the most important abilities a human being can develop is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the capacity to observe one's own thoughts, emotions, reactions, and habits with clarity rather than unconscious identification. Most people move through life responding automatically to situations without fully understanding the inner patterns guiding their behavior. Thoughts arise, emotions follow, actions occur, and the cycle continues without reflection. When this happens, individuals may believe that circumstances control their experience. Yet in many cases, it is their internal patterns that shape how they interpret and respond to the world. Developing self-awareness allows a person to step back and witness these patterns instead of being controlled by them. The human mind is constantly generating thoughts. Some thoughts are useful and constructive, while others are repetitive narratives created by past experiences. These narratives often form the foundation of a person's beliefs about themselves and their future. For example, someone who experienced criticism during childhood may develop a pattern of self-doubt that appears whenever they attempt something new. Another person who experienced encouragement may develop a pattern of confidence that supports exploration and creativity. Both individuals may face similar external circumstances, yet their inner interpretations lead them toward very different outcomes. Self-awareness helps reveal these invisible influences so they can be understood rather than unconsciously repeated. One of the simplest ways to begin developing self-awareness is through mindful observation. Instead of immediately reacting to every thought or emotion, a person can practice noticing what arises within the mind. When a feeling of frustration appears, they can pause and observe the sensation rather than acting on it instantly. When a self-critical thought appears, they can recognize it as a thought rather than an objective truth. This small shift in perspective creates space between awareness and reaction. In that space, individuals gain the freedom to choose their response rather than repeating old habits automatically. Meditation is one method that many people use to cultivate this awareness. During meditation, individuals sit quietly and focus attention on their breathing or bodily sensations. As thoughts arise, they simply observe them without judgment and allow them to pass. This practice gradually trains the mind to remain present rather than becoming entangled in constant mental activity. Over time, meditation reveals that thoughts are temporary events rather than permanent realities. By watching them appear and disappear, individuals begin understanding that they are not defined by every thought that passes through their mind. Self-awareness also involves recognizing emotional patterns. Emotions provide valuable information about how individuals perceive their experiences. However, when emotions are not observed carefully, they can dominate behavior. A moment of anger may lead to harsh words that damage relationships. A feeling of fear may prevent someone from pursuing an opportunity that could have changed their life. By observing emotions as they arise, people learn to understand the signals those emotions provide without becoming controlled by them. Instead of reacting impulsively, they can respond thoughtfully. Another aspect of self-awareness is the recognition of habitual behavior. Many daily actions occur automatically because they have been repeated so frequently that they require little conscious attention. Habits can be helpful when they support positive routines such as regular exercise, healthy communication, or focused work. However, habits can also reinforce patterns that limit growth. Procrastination, negative self-talk, or avoidance of challenges often operate through unconscious repetition. By becoming aware of these patterns, individuals gain the ability to interrupt them and replace them with more constructive behaviors. Developing self-awareness also strengthens personal responsibility. When people observe their internal processes clearly, they realize that their reactions are not solely determined by external circumstances. While they cannot control every event that occurs in life, they can influence how they interpret and respond to those events. This realization shifts the focus from blame to growth. Instead of viewing themselves as victims of circumstance, they begin seeing themselves as participants in shaping their experiences. Responsibility in this sense is not a burden, but an empowering recognition that change is possible. Self-awareness also improves relationships. When individuals understand their own thoughts and emotions more clearly, they become better able to understand the perspectives of others. Instead of reacting defensively during disagreements, they can listen with curiosity. They become aware of the assumptions and expectations that influence their communication. This awareness allows conversations to become more constructive and respectful. Over time, relationships deepen because interactions are guided by understanding rather than misunderstanding. Another benefit of self-awareness is clarity of purpose. When people regularly observe their inner life, they begin recognizing what truly matters to them. Many individuals follow paths chosen by social expectations or external pressure without questioning whether those paths align with their genuine values. Self-awareness reveals these discrepancies. A person may notice that certain activities consistently bring a sense of fulfillment, while others create tension or dissatisfaction. By paying attention to these signals, they can gradually adjust their direction toward goals that reflect their authentic interests and abilities. The development of self-awareness requires patience and honesty. It involves looking at oneself without exaggeration or denial. Some discoveries may be uncomfortable because they reveal patterns that have caused difficulty in the past. Yet these discoveries are also opportunities for growth. When individuals acknowledge their patterns openly, they gain the ability to change them. Awareness becomes the first step toward transformation. Another important aspect of this practice is compassion toward oneself. Observing inner patterns should not become a process of harsh judgment. Every human being develops habits and beliefs shaped by previous experiences. Recognizing those influences allows individuals to understand themselves more deeply rather than criticizing themselves for having imperfections. Compassion encourages persistence because it replaces discouragement with curiosity and learning. Over time, self-awareness creates a profound shift in how a person experiences life. Instead of being carried unconsciously from one reaction to another, they begin navigating situations with clarity and intention. Thoughts become tools rather than masters. Emotions become signals rather than obstacles. Habits become choices rather than automatic patterns. This transformation does not occur overnight. But through consistent observation, the mind gradually becomes more balanced and responsive. Ultimately, self-awareness allows individuals to see the inner mechanisms that shape their reality. By understanding these mechanisms, they gain the power to guide their own development. Each moment of awareness becomes an opportunity to choose growth over repetition, intention over habit, and understanding over confusion. In this way, the practice of observing one's inner world becomes a pathway toward greater freedom and deeper alignment with one's true potential. Every human life carries a quiet question that appears again and again beneath the surface of daily routines. It is the question of purpose. At certain moments, people begin wondering why they are here, what unique role they are meant to play in the unfolding of the world, and whether their life is aligned with something deeper than survival or comfort. This search for purpose is often described as discovering one's true calling. A true calling is not simply a career choice or a temporary interest. It is a deeper sense of direction that arises when a person's talents, values, passion, and desire to contribute come together in a meaningful way. Many individuals spend years feeling uncertain about their purpose. They may follow paths chosen by family expectations, social pressure, or financial necessity. These paths can provide stability and security, yet something inside them may continue whispering that there is more they are meant to express. This quiet feeling should not be ignored. It often represents an invitation to explore the deeper potential that exists within every individual. Purpose rarely arrives as a sudden dramatic revelation. More often, it emerges gradually through curiosity, reflection, and willingness to experiment with different possibilities. One of the first steps in discovering a true calling is paying attention to what naturally inspires energy and interest. Certain activities seem to awaken a sense of aliveness that is difficult to ignore. When people engage in these activities, they often lose track of time because their attention becomes fully absorbed in the experience. This feeling of engagement is a powerful signal. It suggests that the mind and heart are responding to something aligned with their natural strengths. While enjoyment alone does not define purpose, it often points toward areas where potential can be developed. Another important clue appears in the challenges that individuals feel compelled to address. Many people discover their purpose through problems they feel deeply motivated to solve. A person who cares about education may feel drawn to helping others learn. Someone who values creativity may feel inspired to build new ideas or works of art. Another person may feel strongly about improving communities, protecting nature, or supporting the well-being of others. These motivations are not random. They often reflect the deeper values that guide a person's life. When individuals listen carefully to these values, they begin recognizing the direction in which their energy naturally wants to move. Discovering a calling also requires courage, because the path toward meaningful contribution is rarely predictable. When people begin following their genuine interests, they may encounter uncertainty or resistance from others who expect them to remain within familiar roles. Yet every meaningful innovation or contribution in history began when someone chose to explore an idea that did not yet have clear approval or guaranteed success. Courage does not mean ignoring practical considerations, but it does mean allowing curiosity and passion to influence decisions rather than being guided solely by fear of failure. Another essential part of discovering purpose is recognizing that every person possesses a unique combination of abilities and experiences. No two individuals share exactly the same perspective on the world. Each life contains lessons learned through different circumstances, relationships, and challenges. These experiences shape a person's understanding in ways that cannot be replicated by anyone else. When individuals embrace their unique background, rather than comparing themselves constantly to others, they begin recognizing how their perspective can contribute something valuable. Service often becomes a central element of true purpose. While personal satisfaction is important, many people find their deepest fulfillment when their efforts benefit others in some meaningful way. Teaching, creating, building, healing, supporting, and guiding are all forms of service that express human potential. When individuals connect their talents with the needs of the world around them, their work gains a sense of significance that goes beyond personal success. They begin feeling that their actions are part of something larger than themselves. It is also important to understand that purpose evolves over time. The direction that feels meaningful during one stage of life may transform as new experiences create new understanding. A person may begin by exploring one field of interest and gradually discover another area where their abilities can have greater impact. Rather than searching for a single permanent answer, individuals can approach purpose as a journey of continuous discovery. Each step reveals new insights about what they value and how they wish to contribute. Self-awareness plays an essential role in this exploration. When individuals regularly reflect on their thoughts, emotions, and motivations, they become better able to recognize the signals guiding them toward meaningful work. Moments of enthusiasm, curiosity, and satisfaction reveal directions worth exploring further. Moments of persistent dissatisfaction may indicate areas where change is needed. Listening to these signals requires honesty, because sometimes the path toward purpose involves leaving familiar routines behind in order to pursue something more authentic. Another powerful aspect of purpose is its ability to energize perseverance. Challenges that once seemed overwhelming become more manageable when they are connected to a meaningful goal. A person who understands why they are working toward something develops resilience that allows them to continue even during periods of difficulty. Purpose acts like a compass that keeps direction clear even when the road becomes complicated. It is also important to remember that purpose does not always require dramatic achievements or public recognition. Many meaningful contributions occur quietly through everyday actions. A teacher inspiring curiosity in students, a parent nurturing compassion in children, a craftsman dedicating care to their work, or a volunteer offering support to those in need, all express purpose in profound ways. The value of a calling lies not in its visibility, but in the sincerity and dedication with which it is lived. As individuals explore their true calling, they often discover a sense of alignment between who they are and what they do. Work becomes more than a task performed for external reward. It becomes an expression of identity and values. Each effort contributes to a larger narrative about the kind of person they choose to be and the kind of impact they wish to create in the world. Ultimately, discovering one's true calling is not about finding a predetermined role written somewhere outside oneself. It is about uncovering the potential that already exists within and allowing that potential to interact with the needs of the world. Through curiosity, courage, reflection, and service, individuals gradually shape a life that reflects their deepest values. In this process, purpose becomes not a distant destination, but a living path that unfolds step by step as they continue exploring who they truly are and what they are capable of giving. Belief is one of the most powerful forces shaping the human experience. Every individual carries a network of beliefs about themselves, about the world, and about what is possible or impossible in their life. These beliefs often operate quietly beneath conscious awareness, yet they influence nearly every decision, reaction, and expectation. When people speak about destiny or luck, they often overlook the deeper mechanism guiding their outcomes. In many cases, it is not fate that determines the direction of life, but the beliefs through which individuals interpret reality. Belief acts like a lens through which the mind observes the world, and that lens gradually determines which opportunities are recognized and which possibilities are ignored. From an early age, people begin absorbing beliefs from their environment, family conversations, school experiences, cultural expectations, and personal successes or failures all contribute to forming a person's internal narrative. Over time, these narratives become so familiar that they feel like unquestionable truths. Someone may grow up hearing that success is difficult or reserved for a small group of people. Another individual may repeatedly hear that creativity or leadership is part of their nature. These early impressions gradually become beliefs about identity. Once established, they begin shaping how a person approaches challenges and opportunities throughout life. Beliefs influence perception in subtle but powerful ways. When an individual believes that they are capable of learning new skills, they approach challenges with curiosity and persistence. Mistakes are interpreted as part of the learning process rather than evidence of inadequacy. On the other hand, when someone believes that they lack ability, even small difficulties may confirm their expectation of failure. The same external situation can therefore produce completely different outcomes depending on the belief carried by the individual experiencing it. In this sense, belief does not merely interpret reality. It actively participates in shaping it. One reason belief is so influential is that the mind constantly searches for evidence that confirms its existing assumptions. Psychologists sometimes describe this process as confirmation bias. When a person believes something strongly, their attention naturally focuses on experiences that reinforce that belief. If someone believes they are unlucky, they may notice every inconvenience or setback while ignoring moments of opportunity or progress. If another person believes that growth is always possible, they will notice examples of improvement even when facing difficulties. Over time, these selective perceptions strengthen the original belief, creating a cycle in which expectations and experiences continually reinforce one another. Belief also influences behavior in ways that may not be immediately obvious. Imagine two individuals facing the same opportunity. One person believes that success is possible and that effort can produce meaningful results. The other person believes that the outcome is already predetermined and that their actions will not make much difference. Even before taking action, their beliefs have already shaped the likelihood of success. The first individual approaches the opportunity with preparation, persistence, and openness to learning. The second may hesitate, avoid risk, or abandon the effort quickly. The final outcome often reflects these internal differences rather than external circumstances alone. Understanding the power of belief, therefore, becomes a crucial step in personal transformation. When individuals recognize that many of their limitations originate from learned assumptions rather than objective reality, they gain the ability to question those assumptions. This questioning does not mean rejecting every belief that has guided their life. Instead, it means examining whether certain beliefs continue to serve their growth. Some beliefs may have been useful during earlier stages of life, but may now restrict new possibilities. Awareness allows individuals to evaluate which beliefs support their development and which ones should be replaced. Changing belief begins with recognition. A person must first notice the thoughts that repeatedly appear in moments of challenge. Statements such as, "I cannot do this," "people like me do not succeed," or "it is too late to change," often reveal the deeper beliefs operating beneath conscious thought. Once these patterns are visible, they can be challenged. Individuals can ask whether these statements are supported by evidence or whether they are simply echoes of past experiences. This process gradually loosens the authority of limiting beliefs and opens space for more empowering perspectives. Replacing limiting beliefs requires deliberate reinforcement of new ideas. Just as old beliefs formed through repetition, new beliefs must be strengthened through consistent practice. Affirmations, visualization, and intentional reflection are tools that many individuals use to support this process. When a person repeatedly imagines themselves acting confidently, solving problems, or achieving meaningful goals, the mind begins to accept those possibilities as realistic. The emotional experience created during visualization reinforces the new belief and prepares the mind to act in alignment with it. Action plays an essential role in solidifying belief. While mental rehearsal can shift perception, real-world experiences provide the strongest evidence that change is possible. Each time an individual takes a step that contradicts a former limitation, the mind receives proof that the previous belief was incomplete. Small successes accumulate and gradually reshape identity. A person who once believed they lacked ability may begin recognizing that progress is possible through learning and persistence. Confidence emerges not from imagination alone, but from repeated interaction with reality. Belief also influences the emotional energy that individuals bring to their actions. When someone believes deeply in their purpose or vision, their enthusiasm becomes visible to others. This energy often attracts collaboration and support because people respond naturally to conviction. In contrast, uncertainty or self-doubt can weaken motivation and communication. Others may sense hesitation and respond with equal uncertainty. In this way, belief not only shapes internal experience but also influences how individuals connect with the world around them. Another important aspect of belief is its relationship with resilience. Challenges and setbacks are inevitable in any meaningful pursuit. When individuals lack belief in their potential, they may interpret obstacles as final proof that their efforts were misguided. But when belief is strong, difficulties are viewed as temporary stages within a larger process. Resilience grows because the individual continues moving forward despite temporary setbacks. This persistence often becomes the decisive factor separating those who eventually succeed from those who abandon their aspirations too early. Ultimately, belief forms the foundation upon which reality is constructed. Thoughts influence perception. Perception guides behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. And outcomes reinforce belief. This cycle operates continuously throughout life. By becoming aware of this mechanism, individuals gain the ability to intervene in the cycle and redirect it toward growth. When belief aligns with possibility, purpose, and perseverance, the resulting actions gradually transform circumstances. Embracing the power of belief, therefore, means accepting responsibility for the internal narratives that shape experience. It invites individuals to examine their assumptions, strengthen empowering perspectives, and support those perspectives with consistent action. Through this process, belief becomes more than an abstract concept. It becomes the foundation upon which individuals build the reality they are capable of creating. Achieving what you truly want in life rarely depends on a single action or a sudden moment of luck. More often, it is the result of alignment. Alignment occurs when thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction toward a clear intention. When these three forces are synchronized, they create a powerful momentum that gradually transforms ideas into lived reality. Many people experience frustration not because their desires are impossible, but because their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are working against each other. A person may say they want success, yet internally doubt their ability. They may imagine abundance, yet constantly feel fear or scarcity. They may dream of change, yet continue repeating the same actions that maintain their current situation. Without alignment, progress becomes difficult because energy is divided rather than focused. The first component of alignment is thought. Thought provides direction. Every achievement begins as a mental image or intention before it appears in the physical world. When individuals clarify what they truly want, they give their mind a target to focus on. This clarity allows the brain to organize attention and notice opportunities related to that goal. Without a clear vision, the mind drifts between conflicting desires and distractions. Thought therefore acts like a compass guiding movement. It tells the mind where to look and what to pursue. However, thought alone is not enough to create meaningful change. The second component is emotion. Emotion provides the energy that fuels action. When a person feels excited, grateful, or inspired by a vision, those emotions strengthen commitment and persistence. Positive emotional engagement makes effort feel meaningful rather than exhausting. On the other hand, when someone feels fear, doubt, or resentment toward their goals, their emotional energy becomes divided. Even if the intention is strong on a logical level, the emotional resistance slows progress. For this reason, many successful individuals emphasize the importance of feeling connected to the outcome they wish to create. Emotion transforms a distant goal into a living experience within the mind. The third component is action. Action converts intention into physical movement within the world. Thoughts provide direction and emotions supply motivation. But action creates measurable progress. Each step taken toward a goal reinforces the belief that the desired outcome is possible. Action also generates feedback. Through experience, individuals discover which strategies work and which ones need adjustment. Without action, dreams remain abstract ideas rather than tangible realities. When these three elements work together, a powerful cycle begins to form. Clear thoughts inspire positive emotion. Positive emotion encourages meaningful action, and meaningful action produces results that strengthen belief. This cycle gradually builds momentum. What once seemed distant begins moving closer because the individual is no longer working against themselves. Their internal state and external behavior support the same direction. Many people struggle with alignment because they focus on only one of these components while ignoring the others. For example, someone may think constantly about their goals but feel anxious about whether success is possible. Another person may feel enthusiastic about an idea yet avoid taking concrete steps toward it. Others may work tirelessly but carry negative beliefs that undermine their motivation. In each case, the imbalance weakens the overall process. True manifestation occurs when thought, emotion, and action reinforce each other consistently. Visualization is one technique that helps synchronize thought and emotion. When individuals imagine themselves already experiencing the results they desire, they activate the emotional states associated with that success. The mind begins to treat the imagined scenario as something familiar rather than distant. This familiarity reduces fear and strengthens motivation. Visualization also clarifies what the goal truly looks like, making it easier to design actions that support it. While imagination alone cannot replace effort, it prepares the mind and emotions to support that effort effectively. Another important element of alignment is belief. Belief acts as the bridge connecting thought, emotion, and action. If a person believes deeply that their vision is achievable, their thoughts become more focused, their emotions become more positive, and their actions become more confident. When belief is weak, the opposite occurs. Thoughts become scattered, emotions become uncertain, and actions become hesitant. Strengthening belief, therefore, strengthens the entire system of alignment. Patience is also essential in this process. Many meaningful achievements require time to unfold. Seeds planted today may require months or years before producing visible results. During this period, alignment must be maintained even when progress appears slow. Individuals who remain consistent during these phases eventually experience breakthroughs because their continued effort allows opportunities to develop gradually. Patience ensures that temporary delays do not disrupt the alignment between intention and action. Another factor that supports achievement is adaptability. Alignment does not mean rigid attachment to one method or outcome. As individuals move toward their goals, they often discover new information that suggests better strategies. Adaptability allows them to adjust their actions while maintaining commitment to the underlying vision. Instead of seeing change as failure, they interpret it as refinement. This flexible mindset keeps progress moving forward while preserving alignment between purpose and effort. Relationships and collaboration can also strengthen the process of achievement. When people share their vision with supportive individuals, they gain encouragement and insight that might not appear alone. Collaboration expands the range of ideas and resources available for solving problems. In addition, shared enthusiasm amplifies emotional energy, making it easier to maintain motivation during challenging phases. Human beings rarely achieve meaningful goals entirely alone. Connection with others often accelerates progress. As alignment strengthens, individuals begin noticing subtle changes in how they experience daily life. Opportunities appear more frequently because attention has become focused on possibility. Decisions become clearer because they are guided by a consistent vision. Confidence grows because actions are supported by belief rather than hesitation. What once seemed complicated gradually becomes a natural process of movement toward a meaningful destination. Achieving what you want, therefore, does not rely on a mysterious external force granting wishes. It emerges from the harmony between inner intention and outward action. When thoughts are clear, emotions are supportive, and actions are consistent, the path toward goals becomes easier to follow. Progress may still require patience, learning, and resilience, but the individual is no longer divided internally. Their entire being moves in the same direction. In this state of alignment, life begins to feel purposeful rather than chaotic. Each action becomes a step along a meaningful path. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen commitment and creativity. Through the ongoing synchronization of thought, emotion, and action, individuals discover that the power to shape their future has always existed within the choices they make each day. As a person gradually awakens to their inner worth, recognizes the power of belief, develops self-awareness, and learns to align thoughts, emotions, and actions, a deeper realization begins to emerge. Life is no longer experienced as a series of isolated events happening to a powerless observer. Instead, individuals begin to see themselves as conscious participants within a vast, interconnected reality. This shift in perspective transforms the way a person sees themselves and the world around them. They begin living not merely as someone reacting to circumstances, but as a being capable of influencing the quality of their experience and the lives of others through their awareness and actions. This is what it means to live as a divine being, not in the sense of superiority over others, but in the recognition that every human life carries a sacred capacity for creativity, compassion, and transformation. To live with this awareness means recognizing that consciousness is not separate from reality but deeply intertwined with it. Every thought, every word, and every action contributes to the environment in which life unfolds. When individuals become aware of this influence, they begin approaching life with greater responsibility and intention. Instead of allowing negative habits or unconscious reactions to dominate their behavior, they choose responses that reflect their highest understanding of themselves. They realize that the energy they bring into each moment shapes not only their own experience but also the atmosphere surrounding them. One of the most powerful aspects of this realization is the understanding of interconnectedness. Nothing in existence truly stands alone. Just as the branches of a tree are connected through the same trunk and roots, human lives are connected through relationships, shared environments, and collective experiences. The thoughts and actions of one person can influence the emotional climate of an entire room. A single act of kindness can inspire others to act with similar generosity. In the same way, fear, anger, or negativity can spread through communities when left unchecked. Recognizing this interconnected nature of life encourages individuals to act with awareness because they understand that their behavior contributes to the larger pattern of human experience. Living as a divine being therefore involves cultivating qualities that uplift both the individual and the collective environment. Compassion becomes a natural expression of this awareness. When people recognize that every individual carries their own struggles, dreams, and vulnerabilities, they become more patient and understanding. Compassion does not mean ignoring injustice or avoiding difficult conversations. Instead, it means responding to situations with clarity and respect rather than hostility. Through compassionate action, individuals help create spaces where cooperation and healing become possible. Integrity is another essential aspect of living with higher awareness. Integrity means aligning actions with values even when external pressure encourages compromise. When individuals live with integrity, they build trust within their relationships and communities. Others sense the consistency between their words and actions, and that consistency becomes a source of influence. Influence in this context does not require authority or recognition. It emerges naturally from authenticity. People are drawn toward individuals whose lives reflect sincerity and purpose. Creativity also becomes an important expression of the divine nature within human beings. Creativity is not limited to artistic expression. It appears whenever individuals use imagination and intelligence to improve the world around them. A teacher finding new ways to inspire students, an entrepreneur building solutions for community needs, or a neighbor organizing support for those facing hardship are all examples of creative influence. When individuals recognize their capacity to contribute, they begin approaching challenges as opportunities to create positive change rather than problems to avoid. Another dimension of living with this awareness is the ripple effect of influence. Every action generates consequences that extend beyond the immediate moment. A simple word of encouragement may change the direction of someone's day or even their life. A moment of patience may prevent a conflict that could have escalated into harm. These small choices accumulate over time, shaping the culture of families, workplaces, and communities. Individuals who understand this ripple effect begin recognizing that their presence itself carries significance. This perspective also encourages humility. Recognizing one's creative power does not mean claiming control over every aspect of reality. Instead, it means understanding that each person contributes a thread to the larger tapestry of existence. The beauty of that tapestry emerges from cooperation between countless individuals acting with awareness and intention. Humility reminds individuals that their influence is meaningful, but also interconnected with the contributions of others. Together, these influences create the evolving story of human civilization. Living as a divine being also involves maintaining inner balance. In a world filled with constant stimulation and rapid change, it can be easy to lose clarity and become overwhelmed by external pressures. Individuals who cultivate awareness regularly return to practices that restore their inner stability. Reflection, meditation, gratitude, and mindful breathing are simple methods that help reconnect with the deeper presence within. From this center of calm awareness, individuals can respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Another important aspect of this way of living is service. Service arises naturally when individuals understand that their abilities can benefit others. Instead of focusing solely on personal achievement, they begin asking how their talents can improve the well-being of those around them. Service does not require grand gestures. Often it appears in everyday acts such as sharing knowledge, offering assistance, or simply listening with genuine attention. Through service, individuals experience the profound satisfaction that comes from contributing to something larger than themselves. As this awareness deepens, life begins to feel more meaningful. Ordinary experiences reveal layers of significance that may have been overlooked before. Conversations become opportunities for connection. Work becomes an expression of purpose. Even challenges become invitations to grow in wisdom and resilience. The individual no longer views themselves as separate from the world, but as an active participant within a living network of relationships and experiences. Ultimately, living as a divine being means embodying the highest qualities available to human nature. It means thinking with clarity, feeling with compassion, acting with integrity, and contributing with creativity. When individuals live in this way, their presence becomes a quiet source of inspiration for others. They demonstrate through their behavior that transformation is possible and that each person carries the potential to influence the world in meaningful ways. Through awareness of interconnectedness and commitment to positive action, the influence of one individual can extend far beyond what they may ever see directly. In this realization, people discover that their lives are not isolated stories but part of a much larger unfolding journey. By choosing to live consciously, with respect for the sacred nature of existence, they help illuminate a path that others may also choose to follow.